chapter 7. I want to begin at verse 10. I'm reading from the New King James Version of the Scriptures, and we find these words recorded. Then Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, sent Jeroboam, king of Israel, saying, Amos has conspired against you in the midst of the house of Israel. The land is not able to bear all his words. For thus Amos has said, Jeroboam shall die by the sword, and Israel shall surely be led away captive from their own land. And then Amaziah said to Amos, Go, you seer, flee to the land of Judah. There eat bread and there prophesy, but never again prophesy at Bethel, for it is the king's sanctuary, and it is the royal residence. Then Amos answered and said to Amaziah, I was no prophet, nor was I a son of a prophet, but I was a sheep breeder and a tender of sycamore fruit. Then the Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said to me, Go prophesy to my people Israel. Now therefore, hear the word of the Lord. You say, do not prophesy against Israel, and do not spout against the house of Isaac. Therefore, thus says the Lord, your wife shall be a harlot in the city. Your sons and daughters shall fall by the sword. Your land shall be divided by survey line. You shall die in a defiled land, and Israel shall surely be led away captive from his own land. I want to preach on the subject, the audacity of a prophetic voice. Look at your neighbor as you take your seat. Tell them, neighbor, we need your voice. Come on, tell your other neighbor, neighbor, we need your voice. I'm going to tag this text with the help of the Lord and preach on the audacity of a prophetic voice. Something powerful happens when an unexpected voice speaks an uncomfortable truth. If we were to be honest, we're living in a moment where comfortable lies get more likes than uncomfortable truths. In 1852, Frederick Douglass stood before a crowd in Rochester, New York. He asked a question that still echoes in 2026. What to the slave is the 4th of July? And if Frederick Douglass had posted that today, that question would have gotten him canceled. That question would have gotten him shadow banned. That question would have had him labeled as divisive. We're living in a time when 280 characters carry more weight than 2,000 years of scripture. We're living in a moment where everyone's a theologian with a smartphone but can't spell Deuteronomy. To use the example of Frederick Douglass, the audience didn't invite Douglass to make them uncomfortable. They expected a celebration, but instead they got confrontation. They expected affirmation, but instead they received accountability. And here's what I need us to understand as we launch into Black History Month. We don't have the luxury of living in our comfort zones anymore. While we're busy fighting over pronouns, children are being pronounced dead in classrooms. Preach James Gailliard. While we're debating theology, people are dying from a lack of basic human dignity. while we're fighting over worship styles and church traditions, while we've been fixated on our own hurt feelings, who didn't speak to us at church, who didn't like our Facebook post, who got invited to dinner and I didn't, who said what about who in the barbershop. While we're doing all of that, our people are still dying from preventable diseases because they don't live near a hospital. While we're busy nursing grudges about how someone looked at us sideways or didn't return our phone call, our children are graduating from schools that can't afford textbooks from this century. While we've been debating denominational differences on Facebook, families are choosing between groceries and prescription medication. Family, we don't have time for shallow, superficial social media sermons when souls are suffocating under the systemic oppression. We don't have luxury of attacking each other when ICE is raiding and separating families and when healthcare disparities are killing our own people. We don't have the luxury when voter suppression is stealing our voices. What I'm trying to get you to see is that we're in the season of prophetic and not petty. Tell your neighbor, we can't do petty. Y'all not talking, but that's all right. Petty doesn't deliver a nation. Petty doesn't set captives free. Petty never builds a movement. Petty never changes a law. Petty never feeds a hungry child or heals a broken heart or delivers oppressed people. We've got to stop letting small people make us smaller. We don't have the luxury of letting minor issues hijack our major callings. We've got to stop letting hurt feelings steal our prophetic voices. Tell your neighbor, you have a prophetic voice. Every generation needs to decide whether we will be comfortable or whether we will be courageous. And for this generation, this is our time now to understand that our silence is complicity. Those who speak for the marginalized are being accused of division. But I came to tell somebody today, the prophetic voice has never been popular, and it has always been necessary. This Black History Month, I'm going to begin this series called Prophets and Progress, where I'm going to preach 4 sermons from the minor prophets. They may be small writings, but they have massive messages. The first in our installment is a prophet, a shepherd, if you will, from Tekoa named Amos. Amos had the audacity to speak when the establishment told him to be silent. Amos prophesied under a time of unprecedented prosperity. King Jeroboam II had expanded Israel's borders. The economy was booming. The wealthy were living large. But beneath the surface of prosperity was a rotting foundation of injustice. I wish somebody had spiritual ears right now. The rich were exploiting the poor. The courts were being corrupt. Religion had become ritual without righteousness. But as God does, God raises up Amos, not from a priestly class, not from the prophetic guilds. Y'all missed it. He raised up somebody not from the priestly class. He raised up somebody in Tekoa who was a shepherd to the sheep. Can I park here and tell somebody God is not a respecter of persons, and if you don't speak up, God will raise up somebody to speak up where you're willing to be quiet. Is there anybody here other than this preacher that's grateful that God is willing to use whoever he's got to use to accomplish whatever he's got to accomplish to make right the wrongs in our society? So amongst the shepherds, the monks, the fig farmers of the sycamore trees, in a small village in Judah, 10 miles from Jerusalem, in a place called Tekoa, God raises up Amos. I want us to grab a hold of this. Amos was never invited, but he was sent. My God, I said he wasn't invited, but he was sent. Can I just help y'all for a moment? We live in times, y'all, where scared not gonna cut it no more. And at the end of the day, if we don't become people that are prophetic and willing to speak, do I have anybody in church that's not scared to lose some friends, that's not scared to miss some invitations, that's not scared of what people might say, because you have enough courage and enough confidence in God that I'm willing to step up in a season and speak what needs to be spoken? In our text today in the book of Amos, there are really just three principal players. We have, first of all, Amos himself, who delivers a series of devastating visions against Israel. You have Amaziah. Everybody say Amaziah. He's the priest of Bethel. You have to understand that Bethel was not some ordinary sanctuary. It wasn't a sanctuary everybody was welcome. Bethel was really the king's sanctuary. And really all Amaziah was the king's personal priest. The king's personal tell him what he wants to hear so I keep my job. He was the personal brown noser. It was a let me preach false stuff because at least I'll get a crowd, as opposed to being willing to speak truth to power and running the... Oh. Some of us are quiet right now because some of our favorite internet preachers are really Amaziah's death. But at the end of the day, when God calls you, it's going to offend a few people. When God calls you, it's going to challenge us to do some things a little bit differently. So you have Amos, who is literally delivering a devastating vision against Israel. You have Amaziah, who is the priest of Bethel. And you have King Jeroboam. And King Jeroboam is the one that's in authority now. Amaziah confronts Amos. He said, look, man, you can't be preaching that stuff here. No, you can't stand up in Bethel and tell King Jeroboam where to go. This is what you're going to do. You leaving here. You can go preach that stuff somewhere else. So go back, old priest, old prophet, old seer. Go back where you came from. Amos said, I ain't scared of you. Amos like, let me tell you something, man. First of all, I never said I was a prophet. And secondly, I don't come from a family of prophets. All I know is the Lord sent me to tell you. So since you want me to be quiet, you don't have to listen to what I got to say. Thus saith the Lord. His wife gonna be a prostitute. His children, y'all not. What happens when the people of God have the audacity to tell people the truth? Could it be that we're in a season, we're in a moment of history where the reason why King Jeroboam's don't get checked is because those of us with a voice would rather have a title and a position than to tell people the truth about who they are. And some of y'all can't say amen, because if we were to be honest, some of us won't say the truth because we want to keep our friends, we want to keep our social club, we want to keep our job, we want to keep our... But if we're going to get to where God's people need to get to, we've got to have the audacity to speak with a prophetic voice. I know I'm not going to get a lot of amens the month of February, but I'm telling you, we dying out here. I said we dying out here. And we act like we have the luxury of playing games. But this Amos has shown up to tell Trump the truth. I don't have to worry about what may happen or what may not happen, But we've got to stop preaching comfortable message that make people feel good and soothe their own wounds. And sometimes I need a word that's going to call me out for who I am and what I'm dealing with. And at some point, we've got to call a spade a spade. We've got to be willing to say, you know what? I love God too much not to tell you the truth. He has the audacity to speak with a prophetic voice. We need more Amoses, y'all. I said we need more Amoses. People that don't have their hand out, so won't speak to the power, won't speak to the corruption because they're benefiting in their own pockets. I wrote a whole Substack last week. Whole Substack calling out Hobby Lobby. But we don't have the willingness. I'd rather get a good deal on a sign that says God is love than to call out the organization that uses their profits to defund our schools. The only reason why King Jeroboam stay in power is because Amoses won't speak. So I want to say three things today. First thing that I want to say today is that prophetic voices are always divinely commissioned. This is going to give you something to shout about. When God gives you a prophetic voice, you don't need human permission because you're operating under divine commission. If you notice, Amos didn't apply for the position. As a matter of fact, Amos never went to a networking conference for prophets. As a matter of fact, Amos never went to the school of the prophets. All Amos was doing was tending sheep and caring for fig trees. But God will interrupt your ordinary life with an extraordinary assignment. And some of you are sitting here, Pastor, you're not in my lane today because I'm not called to be a prophet. Amos wasn't called to be a prophet. Amos had his own Tekoa, and everyone in this room and then on the East City campus, we have our own Tekoa. See, Corey, your food truck is your Tekoa. Where are my nurses? Your classroom is your Tekoa. For your retirees, whether you're a teacher, a nurse, an entrepreneur, a business owner, God is not going to pluck us out of Prophet University. God is going to show up in places where we've been faithful. Faithful in my classroom, faithful in my workplace, faithful in my neighborhood. And wherever place I'm faithful, God is going to call that Tekoa for me to be prophetic. Y'all, we ain't got time, luxury, to have people in our company, people in our midst, and then only want to talk about shallow, superficial issues. Because when God sends you, silence is not an option. He said, look, man, the Lord took me and said to me, go prophesy. Prophetic voices are always divinely commissioned. There's a second thing the text teaches us. Not only are prophetic voices divinely commissioned, but it teaches us that prophetic voices are deliberately confrontational. Prophetic ministry confronts the powers that benefit from injustice. See, Amaziah wasn't just a priest. He was a political operative. Bethel wasn't just a sanctuary. It was the king's chapel. It was a place where religion was used to legitimize royal power. When Amaziah told Amos to leave, he wasn't defending God, he was defending a system. Amaziah was more interested in being a patriot than he was a preacher. Ida Wells, she understood this when she was using her pen to expose the terrorism of lynching. Fannie Lou Hamer understood this when she testified before the Democratic National Convention in 1964, telling the truth about voter suppression in Mississippi. Family, the prophetic voice doesn't just comfort the afflicted, it afflicts the comfortable. Amaziah commands Amos, don't prophesy anymore at Bethel. But what I love about him, he doesn't pack his bag. Instead, he delivers an even more devastating word of judgment against Amaziah and his family. Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9, prophet says, the weeping prophet confessed, but if I say, I will not mention his word or speak anymore in his name, his word is like in my heart like fire. Shut up in my bones. The prophetic word cannot be silenced because it burns within those called to speak it. Martin Luther King wrote from Birmingham jail that he could just not sit idly by in Atlanta while injustice was happening in Alabama. Y'all, the interconnected web of justice meant that silence was complicity. Our prophetic voice might sound something like this. When I hear a prejudicial comment about someone, the prophetic voice speaks up and says, that's not right. When policies harm vulnerable people, the prophetic voice speaks up, I disagree. When schemes are in the community to exploit poor people, the prophetic voice speaks up, count me out. When silence perpetuates, the prophetic voice says, I'm going to speak up. What I'm trying to get you to see is that all around us in our community are injustices. But we won't speak up. And God is calling us to have the audacity of a prophetic voice. The prophetic voice is divinely commissioned. The prophetic voice is deliberately confrontational. But finally, the prophetic voice is decisively consequential. Oh, let me tell you what I'm trying to get us to see, is that being prophetic is costly. If you notice, he didn't leave Bethel with a standing ovation. He left with a target on his back. Because prophetic obedience often leads to personal sacrifice. I watched and prayed, as many of you probably did, with what was unfolding with ICE over the last couple weeks in Minneapolis. I was heartened by watching crowds of people fight frigid temperatures because they were unwilling to allow the administration to hurt vulnerable people without at least letting them speak their truth. I'm going somewhere, y'all. This can be life-changing if we get it. Y'all, we sometimes won't speak to the injustices around us because many times we're friends with the perpetrators. This is what I need us to hear. The cost of silence when we watch what's going on with healthcare, with education, with our environment, with our economy. What I want us to hear is that the cost of silence is greater than the cost of speaking up. Here's the cost. It may cost friendships. It may cost positions. Preach, Pastor Gailliard. It may cost platforms. But let me tell you something. We can't put a price on the cost of obedience. Family, hear me. We don't lose our voice overnight. We trade it away one compromise at a time. Let me be practical with us. Speaking prophetically might cost some friendships, but I need to ask myself this question. Were those really friends? Or were they just people who liked me quiet? We once again have hundreds and hundreds, 750, 800 people at 12 Noon Bible Study. I'm grateful to God for y'all showing up in such huge numbers. Before I start preaching what I'm preaching, 30% of the room was the white community. But at some point, you got to be willing to risk losing some relationships, because at least you're standing up speaking the truth to what needs to be spoken to, so that the people that we claim to love can experience liberation and breakthrough. And I would submit that some of us don't have the friends we think we have. We just have friends that like me being quiet and like not me challenging them in the midst of all the things they're saying. But if they're really friends, they can handle your hard truth and still want to hang out with you. Friends are not friends that just sign off on everything I want them to sign off on. Real friends correct me when I need to be corrected. Walk with me while I'm going through. Real friends can handle the correction. Prophecy that Amos spoke got fulfilled. Y'all, every movement toward justice in this nation has been led by prophetic voices who were initially rejected. The abolitionists were called radicals. The suffragists were called troublemakers. The civil rights leaders were called outside agitators. 25 years from now, your grandchildren and my grandchildren won't be asking us about our social media followers. 25 years from now, people won't be asking us about our LinkedIn endorsements. 25 years from now, people are not going to be asking me about how influential I was in my particular industry. 25 years from now, it's not going to matter how many people put a heart on my vacation pictures. 25 years from now, what's going to matter, preach Pastor Gailliard, is that people want to know, when democracy was under assault, where were you? Where voting rights were being stripped away, precinct by precinct, where were you? Look at your neighbor and ask them, where were you? When gerrymandering was carving up communities like a Thanksgiving turkey, where were you? They'll ask us, where were you when families were being torn apart, when ICE raids were happening in school zones? They're gonna wanna know when children were being caged at borders, when deportation buses were rolling through neighborhoods like modern day slave catchers. Where were you? They're gonna ask you, what did you say when the lies got told on social media? They're gonna say, what did you say when science was called fake news? What did you say when the healthcare system and the cost of it became a luxury item? What did you do when insulin cost more than rent? When people were rationing medication like it was wartime? They're going to want to know, where were you when Edgecombe and Nash County schools were being defunded? Where were you when teachers were buying supplies with their own food money? Where were you when libraries were closing and books were being taken off the shelf? Where were you when school choice meant no choice for poor children? They're going to ask me, what was your response when the planet was literally burning? When hurricanes had names, but climate change was called a hoax. When environmental racism was poisoning water and food deserts were killing more people than drive-by shootings. See, while they busy talking about black on black crime, they not saying nothing about how many black people are dying because of food insecurity and how many black people are dying. 25 years from now, they're gonna wanna know, where were you when workers were being exploited? They're gonna know, where were you when we stood by, when women's bodies became political battlefields, when reproductive rights were being legislated by men that have never had a period? Where were you where maternal mortality rates for black women look like third world countries? They're gonna ask you. Nudge your neighbor, ask them, where were you when our criminal justice system is acting like a modern day legal lynching enterprise, where private prisons are trading stocks, when driving while black was still a capital offense in some places? They're gonna wanna know, what's your position on homelessness, where we've made homelessness a criminal activity instead of a problem that needs to be solved? I'm trying to get you to see we need Amoses out here now. They want to know, what did you do about the food desert, that our communities have access to more vaping places and liquor stores than they do healthy grocery store? We're going to have a question we need to answer. And the question we're going to need to answer, how is it that your great-great-grandparents could march from Selma to Montgomery with billy clubs waiting, but you can't march from your couch to the voting booth? They got a question to answer. How in the world can Frederick Douglass risk his life to speak against slavery? How could Ida Wells risk everything to expose lynching? How could Fannie Lou Hamer risk bodily harm to register voters? But you can't risk one Facebook friendship to speak truth to injustice. They're gonna wanna know, how could Martin Luther King write letters from Birmingham jail, but we can't write a letter to our congressman from our living room? They're going to want to know, how in the world can our ancestors sing freedom songs with nooses hanging over their heads, but I can't even make it to church in time for praise and worship? The future is going to judge us. The future is going to judge us not by our comfort. The future is going to judge us by our courage. So here's the question. What you going to tell them? 25 years from now, when it's all been stripped away, what you going to say to your grandkids? I'm done. We are the byproduct of strong prophets. And all I'm trying to get us to see is this is not the season for scared people. North Carolina is now the single worst state for per student public school funding in America. And if I polled 100 parents right now with a child in public school, 95 of y'all ain't never been to a school board meeting. God is looking for people that have the audacity to have a prophetic voice. Somebody has to go to the General Assembly. Somebody got to stand up for the prostitute and ask the powers to be how she get more time than the one who bought it. Because if ain't nobody buying, ain't nobody selling. So far as I'm concerned, instead of giving the woman more time, when 9 times out of 10 she's been given drugs and beat up, why don't we put the guy behind bars that bought it, but we got to be willing to be prophetic. Jesus was a prophet. The same Jesus from Nazareth who's willing to speak truth to power, confronted money changers in the temple. I don't know if he's out. They arrested Don Lemon today. Some protesters showed up in the church. The Trump administration literally said, do you think Jesus would show up in a place of worship and disrupt it? Yeah. My Bible says he turned the tables over inside the... We are the byproducts of a prophet who touched the untouchables, who ate with sinners. And when the powers of his day tried to silence him permanently, they nailed him to a cross. But not even death could shut his mouth. So all I'm asking you to do is find your voice. You claim you care so much about, pick your issue. Domestic violence, prostitution, homelessness, food insecurity. Pick it. Make up in my mind that, you know what? I'm going to be prophetic in that space. If I lose some friends, whatever. I'm not laughing over people's desperation. And if you want to hang around me, if you're going to speak some stuff that's not true, I'm going to tell you, you know what? Nope, you're wrong. That's not accurate. It's the audacity of a prophetic voice. I believe that's what God is calling us as a congregation to do. I believe he has ushered us into the most critical moment we've ever experienced. I don't view this moment as all doom and gloom. I view it as God raising up a whole new army and a whole new generation of people that are going to speak truth in ways that they've never spoken truth before. We need everybody marching together, everybody working together, everybody fighting together.